I want you to just imagine a scenario for a second.
Hmm.
You are sitting on a video call.
Right.
You're nodding along, you're trying to look attentive, maybe adjusting your posture a bit.
Like we all do.
Exactly. You're doing all the standard things to signal to everyone that you are, a dedicated, engaged professional.
Mm-hmm.
But while you are doing that, there's this invisible algorithm running in the background, and it's actively grading the micro movements of your facial muscles, the pitch of your voice, maybe the words you type.
Yeah.
And it's doing all of this just to decide if you are genuinely like a team player.
I mean, it sounds completely like a dystopian sci-fi pitch, right?
Oh,
But the reality is, for a rapidly growing number of workers, that invisible algorithmic grading is just, well, it's just a normal Tuesday morning now.
which is wild to even think about.
It is. We are seeing this massive shift where organizations, they're no longer satisfied with just tracking what you produce. They actually want to track how you feel while you produce it.
Right. And that is exactly why we are dedicating today's deep dive to the explosive rise of what is commonly called emotion AI in the workplace.
Yes. A huge topic.
It really is. So we are pulling our insights today from a really fascinating new piece of research. It's called The New Frontier of Workplace Emotional Surveillance by Dr. Jonathan H. Westover.
Fantastic paper.
Yeah, it's incredibly detailed. And our mission today is to explore how this technology actually works.
Mhm.
Right? Like, decipher if our bosses can legitimately read our minds with it.
Spoiler alert, it's complicated.
Right. And we'll also analyze the psychological fallout of being constantly monitored and look at how the most, successful companies out there are building trust instead of just turning the office into some digital panopticon. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, we really need to ground this in the mechanics first, because the shift here is profound.
Where do we even start?
Well, historically, workplace monitoring was it was entirely output-based.
Right, like counting how many things you made.
Exactly. A manager might count the widgets you assembled, or, in the digital age, track your keystrokes, the number of emails you sent.
Or how long your mouse was active.
Yes, the classic mouse jiggler problem.
Mm.
But it was purely behavioral. But now organizations are moving into this field called affective computing.
Okay, affective. So affective meaning relating to moods, feelings, attitudes, that sort of thing.
Okay, precisely. So instead of asking, did this employee finish the spreadsheet, the system is actually asking, was this employee secretly disgruntled while finishing the spreadsheet?
I mean, I'm trying to picture how a piece of software actually measures a subjective feeling like that. Like, how does an algorithm quantify an emotion?
Right, it's a great question. It relies on a multimodal approach, which just means it pulls from several different data streams simultaneously.
Okay, like what kind of streams?
Well, at the foundation of the visual component is the work of psychologist Paul Ekman. Decades ago, Ekman proposed that there are 6 basic universal human emotions.
Happiness, sadness, fear, disgust, anger, and surprise, right?
You got it. So the AI uses computer vision to track specific, what they call action units on your face.
Action units.
Yeah, it's looking for the distance between your eyebrows or the tension in the orbicularis oculi muscle around your eyes,
Wow.
or even the microtremors in your jawline. And then it maps those physical movements to Ekman's emotional categories.
So the webcam is basically running a continuous geometry check on my face to see if my smile is genuine or if it's just totally forced.
Exactly. And it layers other data on top of that, too.
It gets worse.
Oh, yeah. It analyzes vocal prosody. So it's measuring the microfluctuations in the pitch, tone, and rhythm of your voice during, say, a Zoom call.
Jeez.
And it deploys natural language processing to scan the linguistic patterns and syntax choices in your Slack messages.
So it's reading my chats, too.
Oh, absolutely. And some of the more aggressive systems even pull biometric data from company-issued wearable devices.
Wearables, like tracking your heart rate.
Yep, tracking heart rate variability or skin conductance to measure your physiological arousal.
So it is essentially synthesizing a 360-degree emotional profile in real time.
Real time, yes.
And the source material highlights that this is already happening in some very high-stakes areas. Like remote work platforms are using it to generate presence scores.
Mm-hmm.
Call centers are using it to grade agent tone. And recruitment software is actually using facial analysis to flag a candidate's deception risk during job interviews.
Which is terrifying for anyone interviewing.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't some fringe experiment, right? This is a $19 billion market.
Yeah, the growth trajectory is just staggering. And if we look at the timeline, The major catalyst for this $19 billion boom was really the normalization of remote work post-COVID.
Oh, interesting. So when everyone went home.
Exactly.
Hmm.
When knowledge workers left the physical office, it created a vacuum of visibility.
Right.
Managers couldn't walk the floor and physically see their teams typing away, and that physical distance triggered a massive wave of managerial anxiety.
Because they felt like they lost control.
Precisely. And emotion AI vendors capitalized on that panic. They positioned effective computing as like the ultimate solution to the unsupervised employee.
But I'm looking at this and thinking, the pandemic might have been the catalyst, but the underlying psychology here is much older.
How so?
Well, it assumes that workers are inherently untrustworthy,
Yeah.
right? And that they need a digital overseer to stay productive. It's essentially a corporate mood ring, but with the power to affect your performance review.
That's a really good way to put it.
Which brings up a fundamental flaw for me.
Mhm.
Does slapping a biometric sensor on someone or scanning their face actually measure their true internal engagement? Or does it just measure their ability to act?
Right.
Like if I know the AI wants me to look engaged, I'm just going to paste a highly visible, incredibly fake smile on my face,
What's fascinating here is that the technology operates on a highly contested assumption. It's the idea of an objective biological link between an outer expression and an inner feeling. The system assumes that a furrowed brow, always means confusion or frustration.
Which it obviously doesn't.
Right. It doesn't account for the fact that you might just be squinting at a bright screen or
Yeah?
concentrating deeply on a complex line of code.
Exactly.
And because the system operates continuously, passively, and completely opaquely, employees usually have no idea what specific microexpression even triggered a negative emotional score.
Man. So if companies are pouring billions into these systems, we really have to look at the actual data. Surely, if you deploy this tech, productivity must just skyrocket,
I
right?
think so.
But the evidence gap is glaring. Dr. Westover points out there is virtually no peer-reviewed longitudinal evidence supporting real productivity gains from emotion AI.
None. Most of the positive data comes directly from vendor-sponsored studies, which obviously carry a massive conflict of interest.
Naturally.
We run straight into the Hawthorne effect here.
So remind me what that is again.
It's a well-documented psychological phenomenon where people temporarily change their behavior simply because they know they're being observed.
Okay, so the productivity bumps these vendors brag about might just be people performing hustle because the webcam light is literally on.
Exactly. But what happens when that performance backfires? There is this striking anecdote in the research about a large telecommunications company.
Oh, I read this part. This is wild.
Yeah, they rolled out emotion AI in their call center, and the algorithm was programmed to monitor the agents' voices and score them on whether their emotional effect was appropriate during customer calls.
Okay, so the AI is judging how they sound.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened?
The outcome was a total paradox. The call center agents who achieved the highest emotionally appropriate scores from the AI actually received significantly lower customer satisfaction ratings from the real human beings they were talking to.
Wait. So the algorithm loved them, but the humans hated them.
Yes.
Why? I mean, how does that even happen?
Because an algorithm craves baseline consistency, right? It rewards a flat, predictable, robotic tone.
Oh, I see.
But genuine human empathy involves dynamic range. We sigh, we pause, our pitch shifts when we're, comforting a frustrated customer.
Right. If I'm upset, I don't want a robot talking to me. I want someone to sound like they care.
Exactly. But the AI flags that dynamic range as unstable or deviating from the baseline, so agents train themselves to sound like unfeeling androids just to keep their AI scores high.
So it actively optimized the business for a worse customer experience.
Completely. And this points to a deeper scientific flaw in the technology itself. Dr. Westover highlights the work of psychologist Lisa Feldman Barrett.
Okay, and what did she find?
She challenges the entire foundation of Ekman's universal emotions. Barrett's research argues that facial expressions do not reliably map to internal emotional states across different contexts or cultures.
Context.
Yeah, a scowl in one culture might indicate anger, but in another context, it might be a signal of intense concentration or even agreement.
And algorithms are notoriously bad at context. Like if an AI doesn't understand the cultural nuance of a facial movement, it has to lean entirely on its training data.
Yes.
Which leads directly to the issue of demographic bias.
Right, big time. From a pure data science perspective, this is a massive structural failure. These emotion recognition algorithms are trained predominantly on data sets heavily skewed toward white Western faces.
Mm-hmm.
As a result, the optical sensors and the mapping software struggle with non-Western facial morphology. They also have well-documented issues analyzing contrast on darker skin tones.
Right. And the research explicitly notes the fallout of this. These systems produce significantly higher false positive rates for negative emotions, like anger or suspicion, in women and people of color.
It's extremely problematic.
Right. So a system that's marketed as a perfectly objective management tool is actually generating faulty data that could flag a marginalized employee as having a poor attitude, entirely based on an algorithmic misinterpretation of their face.
It creates severe blind spots and legal liabilities, which, we'll get to in a bit. But even if we could somehow build a perfectly accurate, 100% reliable system.
Right, in some fantasy world.
Exactly. Even if it correctly identified every emotion in every context, we still run into a biological wall. The very awareness of being emotionally surveilled actively damages human cognition.
Yeah, let's explore that psychological fallout. What actually happens in the human brain when you know an algorithm is grading your feelings?
Well, it triggers psychological reactance.
Psychological reactant.
Yeah. When human beings feel their autonomy is being threatened or restricted, the brain's threat detection center, the amygdala, lights up.
Okay.
It is a primal instinct to rebel against being boxed in. When a piece of software presumes to tell you how you are feeling, it registers as a deep encroachment on your personal dignity.
And to survive in that kind of environment, employees have to engage in extreme emotional labor, right? Surface acting.
Yes.
Now, obviously, customer service jobs have always required some emotional labor. You have to be polite even when someone is yelling at you.
Of course.
But emotion AI supercharges this. You aren't just managing your tone for the 10 minutes you're on the phone with a customer. You are continuously performing for an unreasoning, always-on algorithm that tracks every single micro-expression.
And that doesn't just make you tired, it actively burns metabolic energy and depletes executive function.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. We saw exactly how this plays out in a real-world setting with Microsoft.
Oh, right, the Microsoft experiment.
A few years ago, Microsoft experimented with rolling out productivity and sentiment tracking features across their workplace software suite.
Mm-hmm.
It was gathering individual-level data on how fast employees read emails, how often they switched applications, and correlating that with perceived engagement.
And the employee backlash was immediate, right?
Yeah.
And it was fierce. There was this quote from the source material where a worker described the experience as feeling like we're back in a factory with someone standing over you with a stopwatch.
It's such a visceral comparison.
It really is. And the reaction was so intensely negative that Microsoft, one of the most powerful tech companies on earth, had to rapidly walk back the features and anonymize the data.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the Microsoft incident perfectly illustrates the chilling effect.
The chilling effect, yeah.
Think about your own day-to-day work. If you know that natural language processing is grading the sentiment of your Slack messages, are you ever going to admit to your manager that you are overwhelmed?
No way.
Are you going to voice a legitimate critique of a new company policy if you know the system might flag you as disgruntled?
Absolutely not. I just stay quiet.
Exactly. Emotional surveillance doesn't create engagement. It creates a culture of paranoid self-censorship.
Which brings us to the obvious question. If this technology is scientifically flawed, demographically skewed, and actively destroys morale, how do successful organizations actually manage performance and prevent burnout?
Right.
Because the business need to ensure quality work and take care of employees is still incredibly real?
It is real. And the most effective organizations solve the root causes rather than installing software to monitor the symptoms.
Okay, give me an example.
The research highlights a brilliant case study from a regional healthcare system. They were facing severe clinician burnout, which is, a systemic crisis in healthcare everywhere right now.
Oh, yeah.
Initially, leadership considered purchasing an emotion AI platform to monitor the nursing staff and detect who was on the verge of breaking down.
I love what they did next, though, because instead of buying a highly advanced AI-powered thermometer to tell them the house was on fire, they just decided to put out the fire.
Precisely. They talked to the clinical teams, and they found out that the root of the burnout wasn't some emotional feeling, it was a structural bottleneck.
Mm-hmm.
So they reduced the patient load ratios, they hired more administrative support staff so nurses could actually practice medicine instead of just doing paperwork all day.
Right.
And critically, they gave the clinical teams autonomy over their own shift scheduling.
And what was the result?
By addressing the structural realities of the job, their exit interviews dropped by 40%.
40%. That's massive.
Emotion AI would have just told the hospital administrators that the nurses were exhausted, which was something the nurses were already screaming from the rooftops anyway.
Right. That's a great example of structural change. But what about situations where a company still wants some level of technological quality assurance?
Well, the source outlines a concept called participatory governance, which is essentially bringing the workers into the decision-making process.
Oh, okay. So like giving them a voice in the tech.
Exactly. We can contrast Microsoft's top-down rollout with how a major European financial firm handled a similar desire for analytics. The bank wanted to implement monitoring in their customer service division,
Mm.
but instead of unilaterally deploying it, they formed a joint labor management committee. Management and the workers literally sat at the same table to review the technology.
And they audited the vendor's claims together.
And the workers,
Push back, right.
they did. The committee ended up completely rejecting the invasive facial and vocal analysis, determining it was just an overreach.
Yeah.
But they did reach a compromise. They agreed to implement a much narrower text-based sentiment analysis tool on chat transcripts.
Okay, so just text.
Yes, and the crucial difference was that the data was aggregated at the team level, meaning no individual employee was ever tracked or scored.
Oh, that makes a huge difference. So they achieved the macro-level quality assurance the business needed, but they preserved the dignity and privacy of the individual worker.
Exactly. And the data shows that because the process was inclusive, employee satisfaction in that department actually went up and turnover decreased. The workers felt respected.
The research also heavily leans on capability building. Like, instead of outsourcing empathy to an algorithm, train your human managers in actual emotional intelligence.
What a novel idea, right?
Seriously. Implement anonymous pulse surveys. Foster an environment of psychological safety so that if an employee is struggling, they can just tell you, rather than waiting for an AI to flag their microexpressions.
Yes. But despite the clear benefits of these alternatives, we have to acknowledge that AI adoption is only accelerating.
Yeah, the genie is out of the bottle.
It is. So for companies that are determined to deploy emotion recognition tools, Dr. Westover outlines the severe legal and operational guardrails that are basically becoming mandatory.
Yeah, the legal exposure here is turning into an absolute minefield.
It really is.
Over in Europe, the EU's AI Act classifies emotion recognition in the workplace as a high-risk application, which subjects companies to intense regulatory audits. And in the U.S., you have laws like the Illinois Biometric Information Privacy Act, which imposes massive financial penalties if you scan an employee's face or voice without highly specific written consent.
The fines there are no joke.
And because of the demographic bias we discussed earlier, relying on these tools opens companies up to Title VII discrimination lawsuits if the algorithm consistently penalizes certain groups.
And this is why rigorous independent audits are non-negotiable. The research uses Unilever as a model for how to approach this responsibly.
What did Unilever do?
Well, Unilever was exploring an AI recruitment tool designed to analyze the language and facial expressions of job candidates. But they didn't just take the vendor's word that the tool was unbiased.
Smart.
Very. They partnered with independent academics to stress test the system.
And when they ran the audit, they found the exact structural flaws we talked about earlier, right? The demographic disparities and the weak scientific validity in the facial analysis.
Exactly. But Unilever didn't just push forward blindly. They actively stripped the facial analysis module out of the software entirely.
Wow.
Yeah, they restricted the AI to analyzing text, and they built in safeguards to ensure that human review was integrated at multiple stages before any hiring decision was ever made.
I think IBM took a different but equally important approach centered on radical transparency, didn't they?
They did. They built employee-facing dashboards.
Okay, how does that work?
So if IBM is running analytics on your workflow, you have access to the exact same dashboard your manager sees. You can see what data is being collected and how the system is interpreting it.
Oh, wow.
It treats the worker as an adult participant rather than just a subject under a microscope.
So what does this all mean? If a company has to spend millions of dollars auditing the AI, constantly checking it for bias, stripping out its core facial tracking features, navigating a literal minefield of biometric privacy laws, and ensuring a human makes the final call anyway.
Right.
Wouldn't building a culture of trust just be significantly cheaper and vastly more effective?
This raises an important question, and it is arguably the thesis of Dr. Westover's research. When we look at the absolute highest performing companies in the world, brands known for incredible innovation and low turnover, they do not rely on top-down emotional surveillance.
Like who?
Look at Patagonia or the Brazilian conglomerate Semco or Spotify. They achieve industry-leading engagement precisely by distributing authority rather than hoarding it.
The Semco example is mind-blowing.
Isn't it?
Yeah. They famously abolished time clocks entirely. They eliminated managerial approvals for minor expenses. Employees are given the autonomy to set their own schedules and, in some divisions, even their own salaries.
It's radical.
It operates on a foundation of radical trust, and Patagonia grants massive autonomy, aligning the daily work with explicit, shared values, resulting in incredibly low turnover, even in a highly competitive market.
Because fundamentally, trust, autonomy, purpose, and relational leadership predict high engagement far more reliably than any algorithm ever will.
Yeah.
The urge to monitor an employee's emotional state is often an attempt to solve problems like chronic disengagement or high turnover that the organization itself created through a culture of distrust and hypercontrol.
It's treating a symptom of bad management with invasive technology rather than fixing the management itself.
Exactly.
Treating people as complex, whole human beings rather than data streams to be optimized is the actual competitive advantage.
And there is one final, highly provocative thread from the research that we really need to touch on.
Oh, yes.
It looks at the future of this technology through the lens of organized labor.
This part was fascinating.
Yeah, in unionized work environments, the deployment of emotion, AI, and biometric tracking is rapidly transitioning from just a management prerogative to a mandatory subject of collective bargaining.
Wow. So management can no longer just install the software overnight. They actually have to bring it to the negotiating table.
Precisely. And it forces us to ask a profound question about the future of work.
What's that?
Will the next great labor movement of our generation be fought not over traditional issues like wages or overtime hours or physical safety, but over the fundamental right to cognitive and emotional privacy?
It is heavy.
Could we see a future where workers organize and strike simply to protect their right to feel an emotion without being quantified, graded, and judged for it by a machine?
That is an incredible thought to end on. Just imagine walking a picket line just to protect your right to frown at your computer screen in peace. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. As always, stay curious, stay critical, and remember that next time you are on a video call, your feelings are entirely your own.